It's here! The 2024 Utah legislative session is officially underway. Let the 45 days of madness begin.
The last reporter standing never has to cover another session ever again.
Oh, come on, we're all nerds. We would all sacrifice ourselves just to come back into the mix of things for the 2025 session.
Well, let's make it through this one first, and then we'll reevaluate. But for now, let's get into it. I'm Sean Higgins. There have been some changes in leadership, specifically the House majority. I've been talking with leadership themselves and a few other people in the know. I'll be telling you what I know.
And I'm Sage Miller. Who is in leadership matters. They drive the priorities and the pace of the legislature. This season on State Street, it's not just about what happens on Capitol Hill. It's about how those decisions and the people who make them could change your life.
Speaking of you, we want to know what is most important to you this session. After you listen to this episode, of course, head to KUER.org where we have a swanky new comment box on our homepage.
Tell us what issues are on your mind or what questions you'd like us to answer about the legislature and how it works. You might just hear the answer right here on State Street. So, Sean, why should I care about who runs Utah's House of Representatives?
The short answer is they have the power. They and their counterparts in the Senate decide which bills even get debated. Think about last year. Leadership fast-tracked bills dealing with trans youth health care and school vouchers.
Yeah, that flew through. Detractors would say dodging full debate and public input. Those types of issues in the past would have taken the whole session to get through. But last year, it only took a couple of weeks before those bills were on the governor's desk.
Leadership also has the power to kill legislation. If we hop over to the Senate, there was a non-binding resolution to set an elevation level at Great Salt Lake. That never even came close to a floor debate.
And at the end of the day, the direction leadership goes ends up making laws all Utahns have to follow. That comes right back to you.
What we're getting at is leadership equals important.
That brings us to the brand new Speaker of the Utah House, Republican Mike Schultz. Last year, former Speaker Brad Wilson quit to run for U.S. Senate. Mitt Romney is leaving, and Wilson wants that seat. But Sean, who is Mike Schultz?
He's a housing developer, turned cattle rancher, turned Utah Speaker of the House, from a little place called Hooper, just west of Ogden. Fun fact, Sage, Hooper's original name was Muskrat Springs. I wonder why they changed it.
Imagine seeing bumper stickers that read, "Raised in Muskrat Springs." Anyways, Schultz used to be the House Majority Leader. If you're a fan of the show, you might remember we talked to him on State Street at the end of the 2023 session. Now he's taken the reins. And Sean, you talked to him about his brand new job. Take us there.
For anyone who's never been behind the curtain at the Capitol, the leadership offices are really nice. Think lots of hardwood and leather-bound books. No surprise, the Speaker's office is pretty big. Not only is there Schultz's desk, but there's plenty of space for meetings where we sat down to chat. And oh yeah, there's a full-sized bighorn sheep staring me down. It was stuffed, by the way, but oh, if that sheep could talk. And this guy, Mike Schultz, not the sheep, loves Utah.
There isn't a corner of this state that I don't love more than anything else in the world. Whether you're in southern Utah, eastern Utah, the West Desert, over the last few years had an opportunity to spend some time out in the West Desert. There is a peace out there that is second to none. And then, of course, on the eastern side, up in the high Uintas, Utah is such a unique state, and I love it dearly. And so it's an honor for me to be able to take the opportunity and represent the whole state. And so I'm super excited about that. I'm nervous, obviously, but that's it. I love Utah. I want to keep Utah.
So what's his deal? Like, how does he envision leading the House in this state he loves so much?
Well, he compared himself to the two previous speakers he served under.
I think the perfect combination for me is going to be to take some of Greg Hughes and some of Brad Wilson and some of Mike Schultz and mix it together into what I hope is a perfect combination. And so that's where my goal.
He's a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll.
So Greg Hughes was definitely a firebrand, and Wilson was a little quieter, more behind the scenes. If he's aiming for a combination, what does that even mean?
His style has a dash of both. He's definitely ideologically more on the conservative side, a la Greg Hughes, but he also has really made a point to bring Democrats in on issues as well.
I really think good communication coming from the Speaker of the House, which is really a good communication from the House of Representatives as a whole, and getting out and listening to all the groups and having conversations with all the groups, whether you're a conservative group or a liberal group or a center group or just any, just get out and listening to the people themselves. And helping understand what's important to them. So having that conversation directly with the citizens of the state, I think, is one of the most important roles as leader of as Speaker of the House. It reflects on the whole House of Representatives. I want to be a speaker for the whole House, not just a speaker for the majority party.
What are the Dems saying about all this?
Well, you and I talked with Katie McKellar of the Utah News-Dispatch. That's a new online journalism outlet that just started. She's also been a reporter up on the Hill for going on a decade. This is her 10th legislative session. Katie says the Dem leadership kind of like him.
It'll be interesting to see how he empowers the members of the House and of his party on certain issues. Talking with Democrats, the minority leaders, Senator Escamilla and Representative Romero, they both told me that they are happy to see Schultz at the helm because they have personal good working relationships with him. They think he's a good leader with a strong character, and he actually does care about including them in conversations. It'll be interesting to see how he navigates different issues. The biggest challenge he has, which is dealing with the really staunch far-right Republicans in the House versus maybe the more moderates, and how he can bring those together, or how he'll deal with divides on certain issues.
I also asked Minority Leader Representative Angela Romero what it's like working with Schultz. She confirms what Katie McKellar said. Their relationship is pretty strong.
So the funny story about Speaker Schultz now and I'm probably closer to him than I am to some of my fellow Democrats. When he was a freshman and I was a sophomore, we officed next to each other. And we really got to know each other, and we've built a strong friendship. Do we agree on policy? No. Do we have heated debates? Yes. But I think the one thing about us is that we respect each other. And I think that's going to be healthy for our caucuses, because I'm able to call him and he's able to call me, and we have conversations. So I think the establishment of a friendship prior to us being in these leadership positions is really beneficial to both our caucuses.
But there were some caveats.
Well, it's easy to talk about collaboration when you're the supermajority. And I think in his heart and how he's viewing this, he does want to collaborate. And I'll give him credit. He'll reach out to me when there's a controversial issue or something going on. We have a conversation. It doesn't mean we're going to be at the same place at the end of the day, but we do have those honest conversations with each other. But to totally be collaborative, I think it's just impossible with the dynamics we have here in Utah and having such a supermajority.
Democrats would like to see Schultz follow through with giving them a seat at every table. But you heard her. Even with good communication, the reality is that Republicans don't need any Democrats to get what they want.
We're going to take a quick break. When we're back, Mike Schultz isn't the only person in leadership with a new role. You're listening to State Street.
Support for State Street comes from the Hinckley Report podcast, a weekly roundtable discussion about the biggest political headlines in the Beehive State. Find new episodes of PBS Utah's The Hinckley Report every Friday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to State Street. I'm Sean Higgins.
And I'm Sage Miller. When Mike Schultz bumped up from House Majority Leader to Speaker, everyone else in House leadership moved up a spot too.
Jefferson Moss is now Majority Leader. Carrie Ann Lisenby is Majority Whip, and Casey Snyder, who is new to leadership, is Majority Assistant Whip. Between the three of them, they will squash inter-party bickering, rally the troops, and whip up some votes.
We had Katie weigh in on how she thinks things could play out with people in new jobs.
I think that they, within their bodies, do have respect. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it to leadership. And so I think new roles, new jobs. Lisenby is more conservative. She's focused on abortion. So she's not going to shy away from fights like that. Casey Snyder, I'm told he's a really hard worker, and I think people respect him for working hard and like not shying away from tough conversations. I can't really predict the future of how they're exactly going to operate, but I think they're coming in with some respect, and we'll see how it all plays out.
Lisenby pushed for abortion restrictions in past sessions. Moss and Snyder are maybe a little bit more under the radar, but Snyder was the chair of the House Rules Committee, which determines the fate of bills.
All right, that's the leadership team. But does it reflect Utah as a whole? Katie had an interesting answer to that.
When you think about our political landscape, when you think about what happened with redistricting, the reality is that Utah Republicans are shifting more conservative because of the direction that redistricting went. When you look at the demographics of Utah and how it's becoming more diverse, maybe you see that in minority leadership, like the House and Senate. They're all women. A lot of them, like Escamilla and Romero, are women of color. So in a sense, yes, but when it comes down to who's in power and who's making decisions, there's not much nuance there. It's still Republican supermajority control.
Essentially, the mainly white and male House Majority leadership team doesn't necessarily match the demographics of the state.
For perspective, women make up nearly 50% of Utah's population, but they only make up a quarter of Republican leadership in both houses.
Now that we've established who some of the key players are, what are some of the issues that could have the biggest impact on everyday Utahns?
Ready for some rapid-fire topics?
I sure am.
We've got DEI. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Republicans don't like it and want to get rid of it, particularly in universities. But there's potential for ripple effects.
Transgender rights, back in the spotlight. This time looking at who can use what public facilities.
Housing. Governor Cox wants big money for affordable housing and first-time homebuyers. Will it happen? The legislature has the final say. His budget is just a suggestion.
Also in the governor's budget is almost $10 million for childcare. Lawmakers funded a tax credit for young parents last session, so we'll see where this one goes.
That's not to mention education funding, water, energy, transportation, or taxes. All things the legislature could tackle and change.
Which means things could change for you. If you're a young parent debating who should stay home with the kids, more money for childcare could make a huge difference to your family.
Or if you work for a university, public school system, or a state agency, the hiring process and even what training you're required to do every year could look a lot different depending on what the legislature does.
And this brings us back to the question we started with. Why should you care about leadership in the legislature?
Because these are the people who are leading those conversations, the gatekeepers, if you will, of what happens on Capitol Hill. And that can directly impact your life. Let's give another shout out to Utah News Dispatch senior reporter Katie McKellar. You can read her reporting at the new online news site, UtahNewsDispatch.com.
If this episode left you with questions, we want to answer them, but you gotta tell us. Drop those over to us at our website and you may see it in future reporting. That's at KUER.org/State Street.
The show's executive producer is Caroline Ballard. Editing and production support comes from David Childs and KUER news director Elaine Clark.
Our digital team includes Jim Hill, Eleanor Gomberg, and Raquel Davis.
State Street is a production of KUER. And if you'd like to see us in your inbox, sign up for our newsletter at KUER.org/State Street. You'll get behind-the-scenes content. Ta-ta till next week.
Imagine seeing bumper stickers that read, "Raised in Muskrat Springs." That was bad. Muskrat? Muskrat?
Just musk and a rat.
Rat.
Muskrat.
Okay.
From KUER.